What's up? I haven't putting very much content out at all on this YouTube channel yet. Centered on the Outback Wilderness and the various adventures that it will inevitably promoted recently, and I found myself drinking out of the proverbial fire hose. But I did want to, while I just happened to be cruising down the highway and have my phone sitting here, talk a little bit about the car and give a couple of updates on things that I really like and a few things that I don't like about the car if you're in the market for an Outback Wilderness. And some of this really would be with any of the newer Outbacks. So here's some things that I really like about the car. One, it's incredibly comfortable. Now, I've seen other people complain a little bit about the seats. I think it's incredibly comfortable. In fact, I was in Dallas a few days ago and had to rent, I think it was a Mitsubishi Outlander Sport, and it was like sitting on a pile of boulders compared to this car. Now, look, you know, comfort in the seat is subjective, but there's enough adjustment in the seat, and just the firmness of the seat I find to be really comfortable. I love the way that the headrest adjusts. You know, you can click it and put it all the way back, or click it forward, put it all the way forward if you're chilling at a you know, I don't know, drive-in movie theater, or you're just gonna be stuck in traffic for a while and you want to lay your head back. But I like to keep it a couple of clicks from fully forward. And so if I needed to, you know, if heaven forbid I wrecked, I'm not jerking my head way back to find the headrest, and if I do want to just put my head there for a second, I can, but I'm not accidentally brushing up against it all the time. The seat itself, I think, is perfectly comfortable. There's, once again, lots of adjustment there. I have spondylolisthesis. I was in the Marine Corps and hurt my back pretty bad, and it's, as I've gotten older, it's sort of degenerated, and so sitting for a long time in a car sometimes really wrecks my back, going to the point where I'm bent sideways pretty significantly, you know, for a week. And knock on neoprene or whatever this stuff is, that hasn't happened as of yet in a little over a month of having the car. And you know, I've had plenty of cars that were comfortable, but this is right up there with the best. I love the interior, the way it looks. I love how easy it is to clean the seats. I've got 3 kids, and so, you know, when I pull the car seats out of the back, it's pretty easy, just with a vacuum cleaner and a wet paper towel to clean the seats really well. Some other things I really like about the Wilderness specifically. I love the look of the cladding, and I know this is a point of contention and it's fairly subjective once again because we're talking aesthetics here, but I love the look of the cladding, especially the cladding above the wheel wells. That the lines that are in there are beautiful to me. Prior to the Marine Corps, and a long time ago, I was actually an art major, which is kind of funny to go from an art major to a ground combat guy in Marine Corps. But anyway, so I really appreciate good lines and lines that flow throughout the vehicle. I think they could have done a little bit more with the bumper cladding, especially in the front. You know, the 3 little lines that are in the sides of the bumper, at least they did something with that. But I think they could have really tied in the sharp yet flowy angles over the wheel wells and into the bumper a little bit more, the bumper cladding. But I still think it looks really good. I've got the magnetite gray Wilderness, and I love how the dark gray and the black cladding kind of mingles together, especially with that hood decal. I think it all comes together really well aesthetically. Some other things I love the way that Subaru does on the inside of the rearview mirror. They have the big panel for the lights if you're going to change lanes or something, and it flashes if there's somebody there or whatever, or somebody coming rapidly, versus some tiny little thing in the mirror itself. I really love that because I don't actually have to look at it. It's really easy to pick it up in my peripheral vision, even on the passenger side. I love that. The drive, I love the drive of the car. I love a mix of a car that feels like a driver-oriented car if you put your foot down. I mean, it's certainly not an STI or anything like that, but it feels like a driver's car, especially if you put it kind of in the pseudo manual mode and use the power shifters to shift the imaginary gears and the CVT rubber band transmission. Coming back to that here in a second. It's a fun car to drive to me. It's very confidence inspiring on light to medium trails, and it feels good around town. It feels good on the highway, but also juxtapose that with some of the driver assist stuff that Subaru has stuffed into this car. You know, you have sort of the best of both worlds, or close to the best of both worlds. It doesn't drive itself completely like a Tesla, but if you needed to take your hands off the wheel to adjust something, or fuss at a kid, it's going to keep you centered in the lane. If you have lane assist on or adaptive cruise control on, like I do right now, I can scratch my chest and not worry about, oh my goodness, I took my hand off the wheel for 5 seconds. It's doing exactly what it should do. So you get a pretty good driver assist package of technology, and you can also turn it all off and put it in manual mode and play with the paddle shifters, and it feels like a car that somebody that appreciates driving can appreciate driving. Now the CVT transmission, much like everyone, I'm not a big fan of that. I think this is the best CVT transmission probably available in any car anywhere, specifically the Wilderness, and how it's been beefed up and the gearing has been adjusted. But I still think it would be better if it was just a traditional, automatic transmission with a really solid, torque converter and some paddle shifters. I think that would be a more optimal setting. Some other things I don't like about the car, and sorry, I'm bouncing back and forth between like and don't like. I love the fog lights, and I've got some Crux-Moto tint over them, amber tint. I think it looks really good. It's going to look really good with my DDS4 2.0 ditch lights that are coming out soon, or going to be mounted soon. I've got them in the back. I'm going to put those on soon. It'll look really great with that, and they're super functional lights. And the fog lights seem to be pretty functional too for OEM fog lights. I don't like that you can't turn them on independently from the headlights. If you're in a really, really foggy area, going slow, like in a campsite or somewhere on a trail, and you just wanted the fog lights on, or it's really dusty and you just wanted fog lights on and not use, your headlights driving really slow through a campsite and blinding everybody, you don't have the option of doing that. So that's unfortunate. I wish those were set up independently from the headlights. What's some other things? I really like the auto adjusting on the rear view mirrors, so that whenever somebody behind you's got their brights on, it's not blinding you. That works really well. That's super annoying to have somebody behind you. I do wish the car was like an inch higher. I know that it rides a little over, maybe a little under an inch higher than a standard Outback, the Wilderness Edition does. I wish they'd have pushed it a little bit higher, but I know that would affect the on-road driving, and that's where most people spend their time, myself included. I love the way the roof rack isn't the built-in roof racks the other Outbacks have, but I do wish that the Thule aero bars that I got from the factory were just included. Like, it wasn't another option. Like, they just threw those things on there because they're not cheap. But I mean, I've got a CVT awning on my roof rack. I've got a Yakima SkinnyWarrior, basically a half basket, and I've got Thule Hull-a-Port XTs or XPs kayak rack, all that up there, and it all works out really nicely. And so, I wouldn't trust all of that up there on the OEM standard Outback fold out OEM crossbars, and certainly, if I wanted to put some real weight up there, I wouldn't trust that quite as much. So I really love the Thule Aero crossbars, but I wish that they just included that, or had rebranded them as a Subaru option, and it just came from the factory to go along with that 700-pound static weight capacity, to put some crossbars that could handle that kind of weight. I will tell you this: having all that stuff on the roof does impact fairly significantly your gas mileage. I tend to go about 80 to 85 on the highway, so I know that's above the speed limit. And I only live 4 or 5 miles from work, so I spend a lot of time driving. in city traffic too, and I'm averaging right around anywhere from 19 to 20 miles per gallon total. So that's, you know, lower than what I wished it was for a 4-cylinder, but it is a turbo 4-cylinder that sits a little higher, has all-terrain tires on it, and you know, it's got all the stuff strapped to the top of it. It's not exactly aerodynamic. Some other things I don't like. I don't like how goofy the screen is sometimes. I don't dislike it as much as I feel like other people do, but when you touch it, sometimes there's a little bit of a lag, and I hear that's worse when it's cold, so we'll see as we get into winter if that becomes more problematic. I also don't like, I like the driver assist, like adaptive cruise control and lane departure assist, which I keep off so that I only have it on when I have my adaptive cruise control on. But I don't like how it yells at you basically to put your hands on the steering wheel when you're going in a straight line, or even sometimes on very small curves. Like right now, I'm going straight ahead. My hand is on the steering wheel, but inevitably it's going to tell me to put my hand on the steering wheel because my inputs don't deviate enough from the input of the car and trying to center me in the lane to tell that I'm actually here still driving. And so to me, the car should be able to sense when it's going straight, when there, you know, maybe a certain degree of steering input or less. It should just not warn you to have your hands on the steering wheel because there's no input to be made when you're going in a straight line, so it's hard for it to pick up that you're still there. Or if there was some pressure sensor in the steering wheel that's how it told your hand was on the steering wheel, not from driver input. But to me, it's basically the way the lane centering, adaptive cruise control lane centering works in terms of how it warns you, and it's every 15 seconds, I believe. If it doesn't feel you arguing with it, like if you're not competing a little bit with its input, then it doesn't think you're there. And I think it would be better just to either be able to turn that functionality off, or for it to not give you the warning if there's a certain percentage or less of input required based on how it's driving at the moment. Because inevitably what happens is if it doesn't sense you, it gives you the warning, and then it gives you the warning in other places, and then eventually it just turns itself off. So heaven forbid you did actually fall asleep at the wheel and the car is doing the best it can to keep you in the lane. If you slept through the warnings, which would be bad, its way of finally dealing with that situation is just to turn the driver assist off. So, oh, you want to sleep with the wheel? Well, here's your punishment. I'm going to let you drive right off the road. To me, that's less safe than just continuing to adjust as best it can without your input. So, and that's sort of, I like the system. I just don't think it works all that well in terms of the way it's set up to warn you, or to, once again, to turn itself off if it doesn't think you're doing your job either. So it is an assist function. It's not a replacement function. I can appreciate the difference in philosophy of use for those two things, but I do think it could be set up different, even with the current technology, for how it works. So I love the car overall. It's the best car I've ever had. Prior to this car, my favorite two vehicles that I ever had, in terms of comfort and capability, I had a Chevrolet Avalanche. I think it was a 2006. That was one of the most comfortable vehicles I've ever owned, and I really loved driving it. It was comfortable everywhere, doing anything. And then also I had a 2004 Land Rover Discovery that was super capable, but it was like, I described that car as like it was an M1 Abrams tank, but put together with super glue and duct tape. Like, all the parts were really great, but they just didn't work together all that well. There was a lot of issues with it, and it was expensive to work on and all that. So anyway, there'll be way better and way more content coming out. My family loves to go outside and be outside. We kayak, we hike, we fish, we camp. We do all of these things, and this is really the perfect car to go along with that kind of lifestyle. So I appreciate you tuning in. I'm sure there'll be things that I grow to love and grow to not love, as I put more and more miles on the car. But it's a great vehicle so far. It's my first Subaru. I've always liked Subarus, been a big fan of the WRX and over the years. And I think, what Subaru has been able to do with this CVT transmission is really impressive. So for a CVT, it's really a great one. So if don't let that be a deal breaker to you. I think it's going to prove to be very capable. interval appropriately and take care of it. I don't think you're going to have a lot of the issues you see Nissan having with some of their CVTs. But you know, so don't let the CVT, in my opinion, it should not be a deal breaker. It's a livable CVT. It does everything it's supposed to do for how they market this vehicle well enough if you do your part. So anyway, once again, this has been longer than I wanted it to be, but if you're thinking about an Outback Wilderness, you know, it's the best car I've ever owned, and I've been driving. I'll be 40 next year, and I've had a job, a full-time job in a car since I was 30 days after I was 15. So I've had plenty of vehicles, and this is the best one I've ever owned, and super happy with the purchase. No buyer's remorse here. So if you're on the fence, I say jump on the Outback Wilderness side of that fence, and you'll enjoy it. And there's some exclusivity too, right? I mean, I've had this for a little over a month, and I've only seen 2 other Outback Wildernesses on the road. One at a local pizza shop where I live, and then another one when I was down at the beach. And so it's funny how many I see 50,000 Outbacks every day, but I've only seen 2 Wilderness Editions, and so it's pretty cool to have a car that bridges the gap between something that's out there, and there's a fair amount of information and accessories built around Outbacks, but you also don't look like everybody else on the road either. So anyway, we'll see you on the next real adventure.